let's take apart various old electronics to see what's inside, and so that we can separate bits for better recycling. We'll start with this thing. I found it in the scrap bin. Sony 3-disc changer, 2,800 watts PMPO, peak music power output, which is a lie. 125 watts, pretty sure that's a lie too. Stereo with tape, with very thick doors. Doesn't seem to have any auxiliary inputs to make it useful in today's world other than that. It does work, and there are CDs in it, so yeah, I guess whoever threw it out didn't actually want it. Let's take it apart and see what's inside it. It's quite big, so it doesn't fit on the bench in the normal way. We'll try. There you go, there's a CD. We'll just undo all these screws. It's made of plastic, so I don't know what it was doing in the scrap metal bin. I doubt there'll be very much metal inside it. Whatever there is, we'll take it out so it can be recycled properly. On the back, there's speaker connectors, an aerial, and that's it, nothing else. It's not very obvious how this opens. This is the side, but I've worked it out now. That slides off. So there's some clips. And there's lots of spider webs. And a pretty big transformer there. A board on the back. Some amplifier on the back of the heatsink. Board. There are clips up here for undoing this top part. There are screws with arrows pointing towards them. That means we need to open them. Soldered on the cables directly instead of putting a connector. That will be a wave soldered TQFP. You can tell because it's got the feathing pads at the edge. It would have gone that way through the wave and then dragged the solder off on those other pads. Same with those things. They'll be glued down, pick and placed, glued on, and then through solder wave. There we go. Got Red End of Silence Deluxe Edition. And Run Kid, presumably Run. Sounds good. Ah, there's screws in the back, recessed in. Or there might be a front piece of the loading drawer that needs to be unclipped. There is a pulley. The pulley there, should be able to eject it. There we go. Get that piece off. Good, it's Energy Star compliant. That's good. Waste power. There's a ribbon cable down here going up to the CD mechanism. And I think that's what the... Oh no, that's the tape here. There's this one. No, not the tape. That one goes to the front. That goes up to the CD mechanism. And that smaller one was just to these bits and pieces. Yes, that would be some standard thing. Gets used in all sorts of different CD mechanisms. The radio seems to be its own separate module. The speaker terminals are retained to the back. I guess that helps stop cracking the circuit board when you're rough on the speaker terminals, like we just were by trying to pull the back off. And there's a fan in it. Dusty fan, Sunon brand, so they didn't skimp on fan. I guess Sony still has some ability to make or choose good parts. Tuner thing. Let's look on the other side of that. Does it have more stuff on it? Is it a self-contained thing? Yes, look at that. It has an IC, so that might be a whole self-contained radio. That's interesting. So is there a pinout for the cable? It was this cable. Sony is good because they usually put pinouts on the connectors. There's 11 pins there. One is tuner left, 2 is 9 volts, 2 is tuner right. So it looks like there's just sound coming out of it. Goes across these links and goes off somewhere. Then there's ground, no connect, and it's got PLL, CEDI clock, DO stereo data clock. Oh, RDS data clock. Okay, so he's talked with some sort of serial protocol. Interesting. With audio coming directly out of it. There's a board-to-board connector there. There's parts on the other side that are hooking over. Oh, that's tied down in multiple places. So that's a main board with not much stuff going on it. Almost all the board is just links. And it's just signal routing to this and other bits and pieces. Yeah, that will be a tape preamplifier thingy. I guess that looks like the tape signal coming out there. Some sort of power regulators. And then amplifier on this board. So that will be the AC coming in off the transformer, bridge, some capacitors. And then it's one of those all integrated sync-in, whatever, STK or compatible clone. The tape preamp stuff's on there. It looks like it. So it'll be proper audio that comes up there. Maybe that's tape logic because it's a soft touch type tape deck. Oh no, it looks like that's up here. There's a ribbon cable going to that front panel board, which has got another IC on it and a screen and other things. Let's take out this power transformer. I wonder if this will have useful voltages on it. Did get the speakers with them, with this. Not sure if they're any good. They look fairly powerful, but they're not probably this generic, cheap, made to look good, not to actually work good type things. Well, there's fair travel on the drivers, but probably to compensate for the inefficiencies in the design. Pretty big transformer. Does it tell you about the voltages? Yeah, they just call it AC1, AC3, AC4, LF, which will be for the fluorescent, and then the 2VF, which will probably be the heater for it. And then there's a little transformer for standby, and then a relay for turning on this main transformer, so it can stay powered up all the time, wasting power. Guess that's why it got an Energy Star sticker. So how much power it wastes being on standby rather than having a proper power switch. And that's a power amp board. Oh yeah, look at that. STK403-130. Some generic power amplifier. And there's some stuff there. It says speaker ground, R out, relay, protect, in, left and right. Then it's got unreg, power I guess, mute. Then there's this board, tape deck, little preampy type thing. Oh yeah, there's some little chips on the bottom which are probably op amps, and a shielding plate over the top. Stop interference from the other stuff. And probably a little oscillator thing there for the record erase current, the erase signal, maybe, or it might just be one of those cheap fixed permanent magnet erase heads. No, it looks like it's got a proper erase head. Oh, that's good. Maybe this is old enough that it's not too budget, too cheap. Okay, from all that plastic we extracted one piece of metal to go to the recycler, although that heatsink and other bits can go there too. I think there's much reason to keep that. Now this uses all smaller screws. Change to this one, JIS1, fit them perfectly. And we'll have a look at what the display and bits and pieces are like. Also get out this tape mechanism. Look at that. There's an opto interrupter thing so that it can tell that it's still moving. Maybe that's related to auto stop, so that when the tape gets to the end it will halt that. Maybe. Yeah, there's a tape mechanism. And it does look pretty cheap and nasty, doesn't it? Cheap and cheerful. It's not auto reverse or anything, but yeah, it has got a real erase head. It's very dusty. Okay, microphone input I think. Is it all auxiliary and headphones, something like that? It's like it has ability for a lot more stuff on that board, but not there on this model. This must be the cheap version. Oh yeah, maybe that's two 6.5mm for microphones. Or the karaoke version. Got these things at the top, which I don't think are circuit boards. Well, not circuit boards with parts on them. I think that's just some kind of mounting thing. Strange, isn't it? PWB panel L. Okay, we'll take off these front bits and take a look at them. Alright, lots of screws have been undone. Now we'll pull this off. I think we have to take the encoder knob off the front deep shaft. And probably undo these as well. Maybe that one. Yeah, another little encoder. Okay, let's look at this. There's some buttons and one LED. There's some buttons and one encoder. Turns only, no clicking. And this one. Vacuum fluorescent display. Another encoder. That one's not detinted. That clicky, this is just turned very stiff. It's got lots of grease in it. And a display, IR receiver, little round shaped buttons, not square ones. Some transistors, and then there's that IC on the back. Something NEC, more wave soldered stuff. See the scavenger pads that would have gone that way, through the wave. Little transistors. Interesting, bigger transistors. And it's interesting they've exposed the solder there, or exposed the copper that's been soldered. I guess that reinforces that a bit so that people yoinking on it don't snap the solder joints so easily, because it's been spread out. There you go, that's Sony kind of cheap stereo or hi-fi system. Well, there must be LEDs, yeah, around that. Yeah, there you go, so it can do things. Great. Sony stereo. Taking apart the CD mechanism, and there's interesting stuff going on under this tray that the discs fit on. Look at the shape of that. And then this stuff here, it looks like these shapes fit into that to make the tray rotate. Pretty sure what the benefit of that is. And then there's opto interrupter, and then there's a pattern on here. 1, 2, 2 short, 3 short, 2 long, 2 long, 2 long. Well, I guess it can tell what's between with those, and then knows 1, 2, 3 with those. Yeah, maybe that's where it stops for each disc, and then it counts them on the way. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Didn't realize there was this extra stuff under there. The thing that presses down on the disc. It's got a magnet, and then that pushes against the spindle thing to clamp the disc. This has a gear reduction for the sled with the laser assembly, and some bits and pieces there. A motor driver, CD stuff. And then the other board that was in here, that looks like it's got 2 motor drivers on it. BA46956, 2 of those. Those will be things that have probably got some sort of H bridge in it, so you can drive and reverse motor. So there's that one there, which did the loading of the tray in and out using that gear, cam gear type thing. That lifted the disc assembly up and down, and then that motor there which rotated the tray. Is there something else in there? There's a ribbon cable there. Oh, maybe that comes out with the tray. Oh yeah, it's because that stuff there comes out with the tray, so that cable is needed. And then, oh yeah, that's the other motor. Oh yeah, there's heaps of stuff in here. Look at that, more gears there which do the in and out business. And then this which does the clamping of the disc. Great. Next, let's take a look at this computer. It's an HP Pentium D. The reason why I was interested in this computer is because it's got an unusual heatsink on the CPU. sort of type you'd see on fancy gaming computers rather than something made by HP. On the front there, you can see designed for Windows XP, Pentium D. It's got SATA drive. On the back, it's pretty disappointing. There's no DisplayPort or HDMI or any modern thing, just VGA. Reasonable amount of USB. It's got a non-standard mounting power supply, so that's exciting. That way you can't reuse the case for something else. This one has a normal ATX style power connector, I think. It might be normal, who knows. And the 12 volt ATX power, ATX 12V. It's got an interesting looking chip there. Don't know what that's for. Maybe that's sound. Otherwise, pretty standard. There's an expansion plug kind of thing there. So there must be a model that has more PCI slots. Probably PCI, not PCIe. There's only one stick of RAM in there. Probably a gigabyte. Yep, 1 gigabyte. DDR2. Those are Windows XP. That's quite a lot for Windows XP, isn't it? Now, found this graphics card, which I think is one I was given, told it's not working. Perhaps we should try it in this computer since it has a PCIe slot. We might as well give it a go. We'll see if this boots up at all or turns on at all first, just through the VGA. It's got these clips. Can you get that from the outside? I don't think so. To hold the I/O cards, and this thing tilts up, and then you can take out the panels or whatever they're, the blanks. So we'll try the computer. If it works, then we'll stick that graphics card in it and see if that works, and then we'll take this apart. Alright, let's power this up and see what happens. We've got a VGA capture going there. Let's hit the power button. Okay, there we go. Here the drive spin up. Oh look, there's stuff on the screen. Convertible mini tower. Let's go to setup. Whoa, it's taking ages to check the RAM. Whoa. System options not set. Your system configuration has changed since last boot. So it says updated the hard disk, 80 gigabyte Western Digital, and a CD-ROM drive. Let's go into the setup anyway. F10. Can't F1. I guess we have to push F10 later. Oh, it's got a keyboard error. Okay. Alright, we went into the setup. 2.8 gigahertz. Pentium D, whatever that means. I don't know if there's much else in here that we want to do. Advanced. Onboard devices. Okay. Extremely minimal. Oh, what I was wondering is if we could put the primary display being the graphics card. I don't know where that would be, if it's possible. Anyway, let's just save and exit. And we'll see if it boots at all, just for fun. I don't think we'll be able to log in though, because, yeah, it's a random old computer that came from somewhere. It has very interesting, nice flexible cables. Not these. Not these ones, but the ones going to the drives are made of really flexible wire, which is quite nice to see. It says press F1 to boot. Okay. Whoa, look at that, Windows XP. Crunchy hard disk. Okay. Yeah, we won't be able to log on. Anyway, let's shut that down and we'll switch to using... put in the graphics card and see if that does anything. Got an HDMI here, since this has an HDMI on it. So that will be the easiest. Plug that in. Oh, it's so close to the top, it's hard to connect. Okay, I guess we don't need that. We'll just put that aside in case that still comes up. And then we'll turn on what should be that input from the graphics card, and then we'll start it. That might not work because it's in a custom mode, and maybe it doesn't work. Nothing's come up on either, unless that was the wrong input. Let's just see. Not that one. Not that one. Okay. Guess they were right, the graphics card does not seem to work. Okay, if we pull it out, then will it boot up on the original built-in one? Release that. So this thing is it's a GT430 PCIe 1GB DDR3. So there you go. I don't know if that's good or not. It's kind of old. Let's just check that it still boots on the VGA. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, maybe that graphics card is wrecked. Okay, let's unplug this and we'll take out the motherboard. Because I want to take a look at that fan. And this is being scrapped otherwise because it's not really much use at the moment. Whatever, I have a small form factor one of the same age that I can keep to use if I need to have a computer like this. Although I've got multiple laptops of the same generation too. Same generation as well if I need to play with computers like this. And perhaps we will, because we're going to put Windows 2000 and Windows XP on computers. That thing is warmed up a bit. Wasn't able to get that middle part out, which I think the fan has to be in there. So we can take the motherboard out and take a look. Good thing about these computers is it's really easy to remove the motherboard. You just squeeze that and it slides back, and then there you go, it's out. It has a really nice design, good serviceability, so all these things there go into these slots, and that's the releasing thing which was over those little lumps there. What a nice system. Shame they didn't use a standard power supply. It's quite foolish of them to not use a standard power supply. Doesn't really make any sense. It's toolless drive replacement. Same with the optical. In theory, I think that should just slide out. And it's getting stuck on the front panel. Oh yeah, you can take the front panel off because you can change. You can slide the drives in that way using this, and that way you can make it into a like desktop instead of a tower. Yeah, that's why they call it a convertible mini tower. Well, it's not that mini. Yeah, I think the drive is supposed to go out inside, not outside, because of those screws that are there. It's very dusty. We should take the power supply out so that we can look at it. Screwdriver, take this, because they use Torx on these. That size. T15. Yeah, it would be, well, the ones that have got the full height motherboard tray would be a nice case to reuse for something, except since they've got a non-standard power supply, you can't really do that without drilling some extra holes to, or making an adapter plate, so it's not really worth it, is it? Well, cable tied in. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, let's take a look inside the power supply. Presumably just a regular ATX, all the usual stuff. So I think in the next generation or the one after, they changed to just 12 volt power supplies and then regulation and things on the main board, which we take a look at shortly. Unfortunately, it's still not a standard size power supply though. Okay, now there's several of these computers, so here's one I prepared earlier. Now they don't have a voltage input selector switch because they have a active PFC circuit, so it will just boost up, it doesn't need to be switched. AC input, then it's got the input RFI, EMI filtering, inductors, capacitors, wire capped to ground. Then it's got the rectifier, so that makes the DC, and then there's a very small DC cap there, just a film cap, probably a couple hundred Nan, and then it's straight into the PFC circuit, which there's the inductor for that, and there's the switching FET and diode on the heatsink, and a couple of other diodes around, some control chip there. CM6800 6800G. I think that just does the whole thing. The main converter as well as the boost converter, and then it's got a little tiny switch in there for the standby. What's the top switch? Top 244P. And that we're using that little transformer to make the standby power supply, and then that transformer for the main power supply. And then there's probably a mag amp or something. Finally remembered the name to make the 3.3 off the 5 volts using that weird inductor there, probably. Weird, just that other inductor. Yeah, single-sided board. Light on Corp, and then some sort of no-name ADDA fan. Is there anything else to say about that? Probably not. It's power supply. Input PFC is nice. That's a good thing that they put on it. Not only because it means you don't blow it up if you connect it to the wrong voltage, but also because it'll be more efficient. Here is the main board, or motherboard, and it's on that tray. We'll take it off the tray. Oh, has it got bulging capacitors? Those little ones are bulging. Yep, look at that, that's bulged and leaking. Bulging, oh bulging, bulging. And so I guess this is in the from the age of bad capacitors. It's a bit disappointing, isn't it? Probably just as well I didn't want to keep it then. Well, it would need to be recapped if you want it to be reliable. There's another one leaking there. Now I think on this tray the heatsink is screwed down into it. Now I can see when you look in there, there is a fan in there. I'm just not sure how to take it out. Oh, I think you have to undo screws there. You should do it opposites to keep the force even on the CPU, but it doesn't really matter with this because it's old and going to be discarded anyway. AVC brand still. Just like all the fans in those HPs and Lenovo CPU fans. Oh yeah, it's probably glued itself down so hard onto the CPU, isn't it? It'll be difficult to break it away. Oh no, it's lifted off. Okay, it's got a proper copper base on it. And then heat pipes. Okay, here's quite a thick thermal interface. You can see it, it's got some kind of stuff in it. Ah, look, there's something cunning there. There's a guide there that directs the air from the edge of the fan onto that, I guess. The regulators. They use this like through-hole transistors for the converter. IO shield is a non-standard one that's part of that. Yeah, that's interesting, that shape. You can't mount this up without it being on the tray. Yeah, so it's directing the air through there. There's discrete FETs in that weird package. It's like a D-pack with legs. SOT 230 something or other. These ones seem to be all good. It's just these little ones that have gone bad. All those little ones bulging. That interesting chip. Could be gigabit Ethernet. Probably is, yeah. That Realtek thing there and those capacitors look more like a sound thing. Yeah, that's probably the Intel Ethernet. Maybe. Let's take the fan out of this so we can look at it. wonder if that's possible while it's mounted on. Probably is. I thought it would just slide out after done doing that. It's got those clips, but I think those are holding the fan into this part. They're not actually retaining it. But then how does that part not come with it? Oh, the screw's on the other side, but there's that in the way. How do you get that out? How did they get that in? That's weird. There's another screw down there, but there's no access to it. Start taking this off. Am I missing something? Does that? I don't know. Holds that on, but I don't know how to get it out that side because it goes down there. Okay, I'm just going to snap this thing off. No, it's too springy. Okay, we've snapped off the bit that now gives us access to the screw. Thought that would have made it a bit easier to replace the fan. It started, but that's still holding it. I don't understand what's going on. It's still messing it up. It's got a multi-part clip thing. There we go. Okay, what was that? Wedged in there. No idea how that got in there in the first place. Yeah, that's why it needs to be easy to take out, because look at that, it's fully covered over with dust in there. So that wouldn't have been performing very well. Maybe that's why you don't see this type very much, because it's far too difficult to clean. Yeah, it's a 2-tower heat pipe fan doofy. Yeah, so we'll throw that away, and we'll clean this up, and then it's a choice as heatsink thing to maybe put a powerful LED on it or a similar device. Great. Okay, to finish off, we've got here an HP Compact 8100 Elite convertible mini tower. That's the specifications there. Some kind of i5. It's either first or second gen. Not really sure. But this one, they got rid of that nice removable tray thing for the main board, which is a bit disappointing. But what they've done is change the power supply so that the outputs from it are just 12 volts on these two connectors. That which looks like the standard ATX 12V connector, and this other non-standard one. I'm not sure if that's the same as an EPS 12V. Maybe not. It's got two other wires, unless those are sensing. And then there's this other plug which goes into the power supply. Maybe that takes the standby. It says there, wait, it's still got minus 12 volts. There's two different 12 volts there. It says it's got 12 volt main 15 amps, 12 volt CPU 14 amps, which would be that one. And then it's got minus 12 volts, 0.15 amps, and 12 volt standby, 12 volt standby, not 5, 1.3 amps. So presumably that will have feedback from the fan, the power on signal, the minus 12 and the 5 volts, the 12 volt standby, which is wired the same as an EPS 12 volts, but I'm not sure if those two are related, whether those are sensing or they're something else. Now you can see there the SATA cable, SATA power cable, that plugs into the main board with this, just another MiniFit Junior connector. So they're making 5 volts, probably that regulator circuit there will make the 5 volts from the 12 volts. And yeah, the same as that one which was going up to the CD drive. So it's changed to SATA CD. All of the earlier ones at one point used parallel ATA, which is gone now. It's got this cluster of SATA connectors. otherwise it's pretty generic. This one doesn't have any bulging capacitors. But again, annoyingly, they've used a non-standard power supply mounting, so you can't reuse this case for other stuff. Anyway, let's look at some video cameras next. Taking apart the computer case, the front USBs and audio, on the back there's a capacitor tacked in, bodged in. I'm wondering if maybe they used wire that's a bit thin and found the voltage sags too much when you plug in hungry USB devices, so they did an improvement on later revisions by adding this capacitor. You'd think if they'd thought about it from the start and wanted to have this in the beginning, they would have built it into this molding. Especially being on legs like that, it's not going to be the best. 470 mic 10 volt, probably had a pretty easy life. I think this is all molded together, so this will just be a shield that under that doesn't actually reveal anything. Buying proper off-the-shelf computers rather than building your own, as they actually do all the EMI stuff for you and all the thermal management, which is nice. It's clipped itself back in on that side. Yeah, I think it is some kind of molding that's been slid in there, and it probably doesn't have enough room for that capacitor to go through. We can make room by cutting this out. It's interesting, they must have soldered the capacitor on after putting it in then. It's not going to come off the other end because it's the header thing is there. Oh no, it will now because they've cut that stuff out. I wonder if they used a normal header. Don't know, is that a normal USB header? Might be. An injection molded thingy and extra capacitor to give it some extra boost. That would be useful if it's a normal pinout. Annoying, one of the wires is longer than the other. Anyway, there you go, that's inside that thing. I've got this graphics card. Maybe we should take the parts off this, since this is waste. Didn't seem to turn on. Didn't think I did anything wrong. And then this comes off. Heatsink comes up on the other side. I suppose this would have been a good card back in its day. GT430. No idea. Okay, well, that's what you get in a graphics card. Kind of little frame thing around the chip. It's like shielded inductors. 1 microhenry and another 1 microhenry. I guess this takes the 12 volts from the PCI Express and turns it into 0.9 or 1.8, whatever it needs to run this core. It's probably 2 voltages. It says 2 regulated doofies. Not much on the back, bypassing under the chip. It's nice and close. Maybe a little ROM. Those are all pairs. Dual link DVI, so we'll have 8 pairs there, and then 4 pairs coming up for the HDMI. And it's nice, it's retained with a little screw, so it's not going to just snap off the board when you try and plug into it. Okay, there you go, that's ready for scrap. Guess I want to save those inductors maybe, I don't know. Video cameras. First we'll look at another recording from a live stream of Teardown video cameras. And then we got this one. So this here has an annoying plug on it. This one here, it's got a normal plug, and it came with a power supply. But the one with the annoying, weird, non-standard plug did not come with a power supply. So I have not been able to turn that on. We'll just test this one just for fun, since we're here. So I bought these as a lot. A lot of 3 random video cameras. And I don't think that's a touchscreen. Really? Oh, you gotta use that thing. And I think this works. It just seems to work fine. It's standard definition, I guess that's why it was being got rid of. People don't really do standard definition anymore. And I think it's got people's stuff on it from whoever owned it before, which is also interesting. It loads up heaps of videos like this at a beach. So that's good, but what we want to do is take apart this one. I also have this one, which is a tape style, and it appears to have a tape stuck in it. I could see a greenish or bluish colored thing down in there. And so if we get time, we'll do that one as well. But for now, I want to get access to the other side of that connector so we can connect something onto it and see if we can get it to power up. Because I already tried joining power onto these battery terminals and it just complains that it's not a valid battery or something. It's got some sort of protection thing so that you can't just join any old thing up to it. You can only use their batteries. So it's got screws of arrows pointing to it, and normally you undo those to take things apart. So we'll start off with that. Although we want to get into that side because that's where the thing is. That's where the connector is. We've just taken off all the ones that had arrows pointing to them, but nothing changed. So we'll just resort to opening all of the screws. Doesn't really matter if we can't put it back together, because it's just about taking a look inside it for fun. Okay, it's starting to open up a bit. There's hidden screws under this flap. There's something else on here. Oh yes, look at that. You can see the drive now. It's got pads around it. It's one of those, like I thought, that type that they used to have in those iPods back in the day, with a ribbon cable joining up to it. Suppose we should take that off. We should look at it. Doesn't seem to have any part numbers or anything on it. It also takes SD cards. I don't think it came with one though. Oh, it has a camera flash. It's for taking photos. You have to be careful about that because that can store high voltage for a very long period of time, as we discovered on the previous video with the Sony camera. There's power supply stuff on this board, and is that a control of some sort? Oh, I think that's the record start stop button. So that connector is not on wires, it's soldered onto this board, and it seems to have multiple connections. I was hoping that only two of them would be used, so we'd be able to work out which is positive and negative to join a power supply on there, but it seems to have multiple connections. We should just risk it and just attach some voltage to that and see if it works. I should be able to work out which one is ground by measuring that. The resistance. Okay. That one on the corner there appears to be ground, if you get a good connection, and then this one over here, one of them showed a capacitor charging sort of thing, which would indicate the input. Yeah, there. That gave I reckon that one there's the positive connection. Let's solder some pins onto that and see if we can get it to go. So that one there looked like ground, although we probably should just join it onto one of these screw holes instead, because that will be safer than accidentally using something that's not ground as ground. Tin that without burning my fingers too much. And then that one there looked like positive according to the multimeter, because it gave an increasing resistance value, which is what you'd see when you're joining to a capacitor, which is typically what you'd have on the input. Any ideas what the voltage would be on this thing? It says something there that is DC input at 11 volts. Guess so. Should we just join 11 volts onto this and see what it does? And then we took the hard disk off, put that back on. Which way up did that go? Like that, presumably. Okay. Just put that there and hope that doesn't short out on something on that board. So we'll set that to 11 volts, and current limit, I don't know, maybe something smallish in case we burn it out on the first go. And we'll turn it on. Oh look, doing stuff, which is interesting. Maybe what we've joined it onto is the thing that's used for charging the battery. Oh, look. It's upset still. It still says error communicating with the battery. Seems to have made this too hard to use. And now it's not saying anything. It just says communicating error between the battery and the camera. So it looks like you can't use it without a battery on it. Didn't come with a battery. I guess that's the end of that then. Disappointment. I think it won't be worth buying a battery for it just to see if it's got someone else's recorded stuff on it. I don't know what the next step is in taking this thing apart. Like, so undo these ribbon cables. Yeah, take this top cover thing off. The screen. Yeah, there's a pretty big ribbon cable that goes between the boards there. A memory backup battery. Screen is attached to there. Folded ribbon cables. And those buttons. This video connector. Now we have the main guts of it. Got photo flash, and then there's this, I think it's that capacitor there, and that board with some tape on it to stop you accidentally putting your fingers on it. Oh yeah, that's the microphones in there, with little tiny twisted wires coming out of it. Stereo microphones, and a little vibration dampening thing. So I've sleeved the legs of the flash capacitor, so I'd have to peel that tape off to get to it, or go across the flash tube. I suppose that will work. Should we measure it first to see if it has voltage on it without touching it too much? Seems to have nothing, unless that's not the right pins. Guess there's no charge, so we can't make a nice bang. I guess this one doesn't turn on the camera flash and charge it up anytime you power it up like some other things do. There's a remote receiver, IR receiver thing there. Photo flash thing. Capacitor, little transformer for stepping the voltage up. And then under there's probably some sort of FET or IGBT thing for firing it. Or maybe not. Maybe that's the trigger transformer. Unless that's embedded in this board somewhere. Oh no, yeah, there's the trigger transformer on the back of that. Might have some kind of automatic functionality because there's a little thing there. There might be a light receiver for checking the environment, the ambient light, and that's about it for the rest. It's all integrated lens module, and then this board with various chips on it. Half the board's taken up by the SD card holder. Why they make those micro ones to get around that problem of it needing such a big socket. Yeah, all sorts of good chips on it. It's got a new core. New core? Don't know what that is, some kind of processor thing. It's got all sorts of stuff on it. Samsung JVC, new core JVC, NEC, and Panasonic. And there's the camera thing, all integrated. And the sensor will be under that. That will be some kind of decoder thing for the sensor. Let's take the sensor off if we can and look at it, because there you go. Image sensor under that. That's the IR filter, that blue looking thing. It was. And there's the image sensor. It's going to all go in the scrap metal now. But it'll be interesting to plug this drive into a computer and see if it's possible to do anything. It probably isn't because it will have some weird file system on it. But anyway, let's look at this one. This one has a tape stuck in it that we should get out. I'm pretty sure we tried turning this on a long time ago in one of the live streams, but I can't see a DC input connector on it. So maybe we just joined onto those. Should we try it again? Let's try it. Just join onto this. Oh, it probably needs more current. And the tape is stuck in there. We tried that before, you can't get it out. Yeah, it says you have to press the reset button, which I don't know where that is. Oh yes, it works as a camera. It says it's gone into record, but the timestamps are not moving, so I think the mechanism is a bit wrecked. Alright, let's take it apart. It's weird, the hand strap can be removed by unclipping this quite delicate looking thing under this flap and then push this button under there, and then that can come off. And it seems like that is to make it easier to get to these things. Firewire, USB, and S-video in and out, which is interesting, but it's in a annoying type of plug that I don't have the cord for. Yeah. Just undo all the screws again and see what happens, since they haven't marked any on this as being for a particular purpose. It's been ages trying to get this SD card thing open, because it looks like you just slide it, but there's this little tiny lever there. Ah, no card in it. Not much is coming off yet. Oh, is the focus messed up all the time? We could try rebooting this camera, because that sometimes makes it better. I don't know why it goes like that sometimes, and then if you turn the camera on and off, it's all happy and it goes fine. But why can't it just be like that the first time? Yeah, there's some hidden screws in here. Get this door off. Oh, and then there's a ribbon cable. That's annoying. No, because the zoom is on there. Okay. I don't think this is going to be going back together either. Well, I've got 3 or 4 others of these cameras in various states of disrepair, so it probably doesn't matter, does it? Speaker, the memory backup battery, and then some sort of control in there for the zoom. Oh yeah, probably under this mount thing. There's normally lots of screws hiding under those, or they're used to hold it together. The screws are all undone, but it doesn't seem to want to move at all. It looks like there's a screw coming from the other side, under there. Okay. Here's microphones, they're not in a mount. Oh yeah, they're built into a squishy thing. And telly light, probably. Okay. Now there's more ribbon cables. Made nice and short, so it's really hard to put it back together. That's a good feature. To pull that thing off. No, it's still too big, you won't be able to get that off past the viewfinder. It's probably all part of the same thing. Yeah, looks like it. Yeah, there you go. Oh, I think it might have been held in by this. Yeah, really thick. Looks like flexible board, but it's really stiff. Plugs into there. And then another cable with quite a few ways goes to that. Oh, it's got this rotating, clicking menu thing and LEDs. Looks like there's only 3 connections from the battery, even though it has 4 terminals. This board seems to come off. Quite a bit of stuff in there. High density boards. Wonder what that does. It's got its own cable going off to something. Still doesn't want to come apart. Oh, there's screws that are now exposed that were hidden before. Probably that too, the one that holds that strap on. And yeah, that unclips. Another screw there. Getting closer. You can see there's a tape there, there's a blue colour pretty well inside there. Seems like the metal bracket goes inside that thing there that the strap was attached to. Ah, it looks like maybe there's a screw from the other side under that. Doesn't make sense, how would you get to it? Maybe that has to be undone, but that looks like it's unrelated. It's probably related. That looks like a switch. Yeah, that hasn't changed anything, that's just a little limit switch thing for the mechanism. It looks like that's a screw hole, but it's not, it's just, I think it's something that the little cover pushed into. Don't understand. This is a clip. You just pull on it really hard. So they've hidden a screw under that label. Oh, look at that. I think that's what's happened. Or not. something under there. Might have just been a hole. Yeah, well, the pivot point's in the wrong place. That probably munted the tape. Well, it came off. Oh, the thing that I punched through there is how you do the alignment for the video recorder. Down there is one of the rollers. So that thing that just got snapped off of there is something that's been screwed from the other side of this. So it looks like, I don't know, how would you get that to come off? I think you have to be able to eject it. It's independent of those. But because we can't eject it because it's jammed. So that doesn't even make sense because it's the same piece of metal as that. I think you have to undo all these screws around here so that the mechanism comes out, and then it might separate from that part. Maybe servicing wasn't their goal when designing this. Serviceability. It's Panasonic though, it's supposed to be good. Oh, was this thing supposed to open? It didn't open, did it? It was when you opened the side door, only that part opened. This piece here never opened. Wow, look how small the camera part. Just that is the actual optics in that tiny little area. That's quite amazingly small. Compared to that other one, which is possibly a newer camera because it's hard disk recording rather than tape, that it's considerably bigger, probably because this has a better lens in it, like better quality zoom. And this is just held in by one screw by the look of it. Yeah, that's the camera, that's it. Interesting little thing. I'll try to get this board off. There's ribbon cables on this. Quite high density. Stuff on both sides, and then that other one was plugged into that. There's more stuff on both sides. It goes onto the bottom board. Oh, maybe that's to do with firewire and USB and things, since it goes onto there. Maybe related to something to do with that. Tripod mount. It's taped in as well. Okay. Don't know why it's taped in. Yeah, a little connection between these two boards. Must be important. Maybe it's the SD card interface. Seems like the tracks go to somewhere on this end, and then all those other things take that connection by the look of it. Anyway, the mechanism is now out. And take this bracket off the back. If we can get to the loading motor and remove that, then we should be able to manually eject the tape, or try to, because it wasn't ejecting before. There must be something jammed or stuck. As you can see, the tape starts to feed out when winding that. And we could try running that motor to see if it will go into eject state. Looks like the cameras have turned into a lot more stuff than they were when they were assembled. That means it's not good to dismantle things before you throw it out, because it turns into heaps more stuff. But it needs to be separated into recyclable parts. Oh, those aren't moving back in. That's dodgy. Oh, there we go. So we've got to wind the tape in. Except now I touched it, so I probably ruined it. If this just ejects fine, then why didn't it do it when it was in the machine? Because, yeah. Now let's chewed it up a little bit. I try to wind it in a bit so that the edge of the tape doesn't get squished. It says there, playback only test tape. So maybe this came from a place that was trying to fix it, and that's their test tape that got stuck in there, and they couldn't be bothered doing this to get it out. I wonder if we should try that in another machine. Well, it's a bit crunched up now, so I don't really want to try it in a good machine. So after all that, it didn't look like there was much wrong with this, because it was happy to just eject when the power was applied. So should we put it all back together now and see if it works? Yeah, I don't know about that. think it's a bit far gone. The other thing I've got here is a phone. It was a phone. How do you get this out so you can recycle it without destroying it in the process or making it catch on fire? So that's the main board from the phone. And it seems to be just cameras. It's just cameras. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many does it need? That's the main speaker. Got quite a bit of travel. The interesting thing is, you see that hole there? That's where the in-screen fingerprint reader went. Put a light from behind, see through the screen. So I guess it's an OLED screen, so it doesn't need a backlight. And this little camera thing, it must have some kind of light source in it, was over that thing there. And that's it, that's an in-screen fingerprint reader. Just looks like a camera. The person whose phone this was, that it ended up full of water, which is why it doesn't work properly anymore, and it was given to me, said that the in-screen fingerprint reader was useless, it hardly ever worked. So there you go. Don't get a phone with one of those, get one with a proper fingerprint reader on it. This might still power up, we can try it. Just have to work out how to put all the bits back together. Did the screen connectors that, and it got this cable. And then this main board. That's all the SIM card reader business. Quite a lot of stuff. I think it's dual SIM and SD card. I think there was 3 holes in it. Yeah, that's quite exciting, isn't it? You don't see that much these days. Dual SIM and SD card. And then there's all these cameras. And when you pull the connector off for the cameras, you can see all this corrosion underneath it. So I guess that's why they don't work very well. So there's corrosion in the connectors. The focus doesn't work on the camera, although it does still turned on and you could use the camera app, but it just didn't do anything. It wouldn't focus at all. Oh, hang on, yeah, the screen is plugged in. Okay. It keeps saying on the screen that your phone is overheating and then it closes the applications. Oh, does it? The OLED lights up the screen. I think that's the vibrate thing. Probably should we try turning that on while we wait for this to boot up? Let's see, 4 volts is probably enough. Yeah, it's a vibrate thing. Wonder if it lights going on 12 volts. Yeah, it vibrates more. I think it might be finished now. There you go, that's a vibrate motor. I need to log into this. Yeah, so it's a phone that doesn't really do very much. And it's got this weird picture on the background. I put open camera on it because I thought that might be better, because when you open the normal one, it just says the camera's not responding, and then it just says the phone's overheating. But it won't focus on anything. And if you grab hold of the little camera thing and poke the lens around on it, you can make it go into focus. But yeah, it's supposed to be doing that itself, not sometimes. And that part there gets really hot. So there you go, that's a phone. But I want to be able to take the battery out so I can put it in the recycling thing. Or do you think I should just throw the whole thing in the battery recycling thing? Would they take it? You can see in there the back of that taking a picture icon. See the edge of it. Interesting, I guess. If you peeled the screen off, you'd be able to see the picture from the back side of the screen. And if you try to change the camera, which I think the settings for that's there, it just crashes and then stops doing anything. I guess I should just leave it turned on until it flattens the battery itself, and then it'll be safer to try and pull it out. Oh, it actually went to the front camera now. That's never happened before. Does that mean it's recovering itself? Getting better? Anyway, that's a random old phone. Although it's not that old, it's just been in water for a while. So that's the drive that was in that video camera. Travel Star, 30 gigabytes, 4,200 RPM. Now, let's see if it's the same type of thing in this camera. Is it the same drive, do you think? Looks like it could be. Well, let's find out. We'll take apart this camera to see what type of hard disk it's got inside it. Panasonic SDR-H101 standard definition. That's not standard definition, that means SD card or hard disk. It's got an SD card holder there with a interesting cover on it. Doesn't really have any advanced features, it's just a camera with a light. LED video light. Let's open it. Not really sure where. We just want to look at the hard disk. Can we just take that off? The camera is working as we saw before in the other video, but it's not really that useful because standard definition. Everyone's phone does better than that these days. Interesting cable with a kink. There you go, we've answered the question. It's a Toshiba this time. There's some kind of sleeve on it. I think that's that part of it. Seems to be. Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to take that off. Oops, now it's bent. Because that sticker is stuck through on the internal parts. Yeah, it's up the other way compared to the other one. So it's the same type of drive, just a different manufacturer. It's interesting that, doesn't that look like a Seagate logo? So maybe I need to get an adapter that can turn that interface into the IDE, maybe? Something like that. So we can try these out. They are 3.3 volt. I wonder if that's the same. Yeah, 3.3 volt drives. I guess the adapter thing, presumably it exists, would need to have a regulator on it to change the normal 5 volts that they'd use in computer drives or laptop drives. I don't know, I want to pull that off. There you go, it's pulled off. Got an insulating sheet. I'm wondering if they are actually the same thing, just being rebadged. And the metalwork is slightly different because that edge there is different. And it's a shame I bent that thing. It was a nice little drive and then I ruined it. I don't know, we probably didn't really need to take more of that apart, do we? Don't know, what are we going to find? The same stuff we saw in the other camera. Boards with lots of chips on it. And what I do want to do is put this drive into that camera, because that camera works, so we could try swapping the drive over to see if anything interesting happens. Let's try turning it on first without a drive in it and see if it complains about anything. At least this is what's wrong with this camera today. At least we can turn on this one, unlike that other camera that we took apart where it doesn't have a power supply and it doesn't accept anything else that I try and connect onto it. Oh, it's saying access hard disk. I guess it's trying to, and it won't even turn on without that. Alright then, if we put this back, will it work? They made that quite nice to get into. Is that because they're foreseeing hard disk damage and want it to be repairable? Probably because people are gonna... okay, it just turns straight on when there's a drive in there. Interesting. It just goes. The drive is ticking. Does that mean we've ruined it already? Maybe. Really? We didn't even do much to it. Yeah, I think it's sad. Yeah, it said there, hard disk error occurred. Okay, so just taking it out and poking it around a bit wrecked the drive. That's a shame. Guess that's what happens. That's very surprising, because we didn't actually do anything to it, did we? Well, peeled that thing off, but there isn't really any reason why that would wreck it. Weirdly, the contacts are on the other side at that end, so I guess it goes around that way. Probably gonna really wreck it now. And that one doesn't have... does it have a releasing thing? Let's get rid of that stupid annoying thing. It does, it's on the inside. So that means that should go that way, because that came off that end like that, and that's pin 1, and it says pin 1 in there. So let's go that way. It doesn't make sense because the doubled up track is on the other side now, unless we put that one back wrong. There doesn't seem to be anything to indicate pin 1 on this. Alright, let's see if we can ruin it. We'll just see if it spins up at all. Hang on a minute. I plugged that in round the wrong way as well. Not a good sign, is it? It's turned on. Hard disk error occurred, turn it off and on again. Does that mean it will format it for you? Guess there's no... Wondering, can you go into a menu and format the drive? Format media. Hard disk? Yes. It says card read error. Please reformat. Guess you can't just arbitrarily change the drive on this thing because it doesn't support that. We'll put back in the original one and see if that goes. Or is that ruined now as well? Okay. I guess it's happy again? Oh no, it just sounds like it's making ticking noises, but I think it was the ribbon cable. It says it's recording. Good play. Seems like it's forgotten everything else because it used to have other stuff on it. Interesting. Weird. It did have stuff on it. Okay. It's somehow lost it. We'll go and see if we can do the format. Yeah, formatted. Okay, so we can go and record a new video. Alright, that's a hard disk video camera. Sort of works. Except maybe it doesn't work when that's mounted on it now because of something. I don't know, do you think that's shorted out in a way we don't understand? Great. Alright, there you go. While we're here, let's look at some hard disks. Got the standard 3.5 inch, well, was standard back in the day, IDE and SATA. Seagate used to make them really nice with this panel on the bottom, a C shield, so the drive was quite well protected, and then they cheaped out and stopped doing that, and then they're vulnerable. Then we've got 3 2.5 inch drives, which started out thick, and then became thinner and higher capacity, all the way down to these, which I think 7.5 millimeters thick. And then they went back to really thick again for enterprise use, these high performance drives. And then now you get SSDs in that form factor, large PCIe 4 high-speed drives. That's mounted in a thing to keep it cool, since it uses quite a bit of power. Then we got these drives, which we discovered today in the video cameras, which is that 2 inch or something, 2.5 something, a bit more than 2.5 inches, 2 inch drive presumably. And then we got micro drives, which is even smaller. So that's a whole hard disk, hard disk, inside a thing about the size of a compact flash card, but a little bit thicker, and most compact flash devices will support these. They're very unreliable though. I had several that worked for a while and then just didn't work anymore. I think 6 gigs is the biggest they were ever available in, and I've got one of the ones that failed and taken the lid off. Got a lot of capacitors. So there's a zebra strip type thing which goes to the head, and then the motor's external and connects on there. Yeah, really small hard disk. When you're running them, you can hear them spinning up. They only stay on for short periods of time to conserve power. It's quite a power hungry and slow thing compared to flash memory on compact flash. Back then this was economical, I guess, because flash memory was expensive at the time. Yeah, I think that might be one of the smallest ever types of hard disk that was created. Yeah, quite a bit smaller. The screws that hold it together are very tiny. Anyway, that's hard disks.